Nothing there. Okay, we're live. Yep. Beth, do you want to move in like a teeny bit? Or yeah. Okay. Ha! All right, so welcome back to Voices of the Priestess. As you know, my name is Jenna Durbin, and I somehow convinced these amazing women to join the conversation today. I was thinking about, as we were getting ready to do this, I was thinking about how, for generations and centuries and things like that, women have like gathered around, usually in a circle or type setting, but sometimes like around a kitchen table, and have come with, like something very specific that they were struggling with. And it's like the way that I see this channel kind of maybe touching into some people, or maybe it's just probably us listening to this conversation when we're done, and then we'll be like, wow, there's so much. Yeah, no one else. But if other people join in and are listening in, the hope is like maybe because we're not trying to hit these big topics perfectly, maybe because we're not really the expertise in these certain areas, we can come in with a vulnerability that maybe has gone missing in the social media network. And maybe the voices that we can bring through can be ones that someone's like when you listen, that resonance as to like, oh my gosh, I feel seen, And so that's really, as guests here today, I was joking with them that like no one else would come on, so that these are the brave souls to have the first appearance.
Wait, I didn't know
Yeah.
Wait, where are we?
Oh, you thought you were joking. You were first? There were 12 others that signed up.
We know there's 13 and 14.
Yeah, there you go. But I was wondering what her agenda was behind all of it.
It's so funny.
No, you guys are, no, this is the best of the best right here. But I was thinking can we speak to that like place of resonance with people? I'm not going to, so a few things about the rules as I hear them as guests coming on. We won't say anything specifically about where you work or what you do really specifically. We'll keep the specifics out of it. That way we talked about like no marketing so that nobody feels like we have agendas. Okay. The point is not to get it perfect. The point is to just get it as real as you can. And I told them right before we started recording that they're totally allowed to skip out on a question if they feel like they don't want to answer that or they aren't in the space to answer it. I think that's all I wanted to pull through like initially. I think what I want to ask you though is the first like kind of knowing you're going to be recorded, knowing that you're like live right now and that there's really no like take backs.
Yes.
What did that bring up for you?
Yeah.
Anticipating this, launch time.
It's so funny because I feel like the minute you know you're observed, it's really hard not to switch into performance mode. Mm-hmm. So I can feel in myself personally, and like when, okay, the camera's on, I can feel that like, I'm on, you know what I mean, kind of thing. And so I'm like actively like trying to let that go. That's like what it brought up for me. And then I like looked in the camera and I'm like, oh, that's not a good angle. Like I'm feeling all the girl things. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. But I'm just like, that's not why I'm here. And I just have to go back to like why I'm here. And you realize how quickly you get tripped up on shit that doesn't matter. And then all of your energy is on how you're looking on the camera instead of like what you're here to pull through in the conversation. So I'm like, no, this is a great practice.
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I always feel, our history together, has always been a container, But I feel like because the camera puts this element, I gotta say it and get it right. But I think we're showing up to be authentic. We're showing up to pull through what comes through and messy, ugly, whatever.
But there's like that specific, like what you're both tapping into, and I totally can resonate with, is this. It's like perfectionism, It's also like worthiness It's also like this sense of someday I'll get there. Spiritually, mentally, physically, emotionally. Like someday I will be the poster child of whatever I've created within my awareness and what we've pulled collectively together to say, this is what's good, this is what's the best version of this, to be human. And regardless of, even though I'm not subscribing to so many of those things, like sometimes my kids drink a Coca-Cola, like, I'm kind of in this middle land. But I still feel myself at times feeling like I'm just not getting it right. And I guess, like, does that feel the same as to what you were talking into coming here?
Yeah. And I think it's like the biggest blocker to like experiencing a connection with your own soul with God. I think it's the thing that blocks us the most, is thinking we're not enough. And I always come back to, God has to be for everybody or it's not God. That means everybody, right? So it's like, if you start to feel like it's just for these people who wear turbans and like talk like this, or this is their job, or they only eat this way, like God's only for them, I think that's the biggest illusion. And that's where a lot of harm happens, because people end up following people who outwardly, they've mastered the image, but inside might be completely misaligned. You know what I mean?
And so I feel like you're 100% tapping into this idea that, like, so what's happened, I feel like, throughout generations is that the systems of sorts, or the male hierarchy, or whoever had the mic across the board, and this is not at all a channel to like say no man, like I very much love and appreciate what the masculine can bring for us. But what I'm recognizing is like there was always these conversations of the feminine going on behind the scenes, where people were like coming into these places and being seen behind the screens. And that's what I think that like our group collectively we try to represent for each other, is like there's this middle land. I keep using that. And like a friend in the group sent Dave Matthews In Between, like the space between, right? Like the space between that we kind of are sitting in, and we're like, okay, we're not going to go to that extreme, and we're not going to go to that extreme, and whatever it is, because anytime we draw a line, we leave someone on the other side. And so how do we come into this harmony and unity for humanity and not, draw those lines?
I think you spoke to it. It's coming back to that center. It's coming back to the openness and the heart, like not defining it, not being able to see the dark and see the light, to be able to see there is suffering, but there is hope. And it's that middle ground.
How do you know when you're in your center?
I know when I'm in my center, because it's the light, it's the love, regardless of what's happening. It's not the illusion. This is all the perception of what it is, and what it is it's love.
And I think so
and
much
it's goodness, and it's there is no separation. We're all one. No matter what it looks like, no matter what's going on, no matter how much you know or don't know.
Right.
It's all one.
And I think for different people, some people feel what that feels like, that love frequency. They say like it's the highest healing frequency in the entire world. And love is transcends, right? We see that. We see the stories throughout history of love really completely defying the social and the scientific norms of the time and creating these miracles through the frequency of love. And I think what you're saying is like, sometimes we can't point out exactly what it is. Sometimes it's felt, or sometimes it's, I don't know, how do you feel or see or recognize love?
How do I recognize love? It's definitely a feeling in my body. And I love this concept that like, it's not necessarily even me loving someone or them loving me. It's like love coming through me to this person. Like I'm this channel for love. And for me, that's love from God, the divine, whatever it is. But I love to like I like to marinate in love. So if I'm with my kids and I'm looking at them and I get that heart swelling feeling, you know, they bring that out in me a lot. And I look at them and I get that heart swelling feeling. And when I recognize that feeling, I let myself sit in it.
Yeah.
Like I want to sit there as long as possible and I want it to soak into every single cell. And I think there's something that's like a very healing, powerful practice of like when you feel that love, soak it in, like intentionally soak it in. And there's actually science around this too. There's like, it's 15 seconds that you have to sit with a positive emotion for it to imprint psychologically. Negative emotions are immediate. And it's just that survival mechanism in our brain. But even knowing the science helped me because I'm like, I gotta let myself savor the good feelings, because if I don't, they're fleeting and you forget it. Whereas like you have one negative experience, you touch the hot stove and it's immediate. So I think when you can really let yourself, and I do this even before I go to bed, I will literally tune into that like love, healing, and I'm like, let me just simmer in this while I sleep. And that's my intention, is to like simmer, low simmer while I'm sleeping. So I can wake up and like it's crazy and it's chaotic and it's hectic and I get pissed off about something, but it's like, at least I know I'm simmering overnight. Low simmer overnight.
She's got this slow cooker on.
The slow cooker overnight.
That is beautiful. And you know, as you're talking about that, my question is how, like, I actually can't decipher anymore the difference between prayer and that.
Yeah.
That to me feels like a form of prayer.
Oh yeah.
You know, like prayer can be just very much this overall bubble of intention that you can hold and exude, right? Like exude from your energy field and just be like, okay, whatever it touches, because ultimately we talk about this and we don't know what's best for anyone, like at all. So all we can really do is send that out with the hope that anything that it touches or brushes up against is going to send them more into the light or out of negativity or whatever it is. But I so resonate with what you're pulling through, and that using the child, you know, maybe let's speak to that a little bit more, like using the children. You know, what did you just say? Like, come to me as children. Why do you think they get you there?
You're gonna make me cry, Jenna. I'm like I cry every time I think about my kids, especially when I love them. But I think they are literally a manifestation of pulling through the divine in the most amazing way, right? You're pulling through a soul into the world that came through you, looks like you, but is their own unique creation. But you feel this intense, immediate connection and bond with. And I think I look at them and I can so easily see. I remember writing, and I do see this with my kids, but I wrote to myself when I was pregnant with my son, like, I hope the way that I look at him, like when he sees the way I look at him, it reflects back how divine and beautiful and loved he is. Like I look at him with the eyes that God has, that he can see that through me. Like that was something I wrote down as like an intention that I wanted to do for my son, like with my babies. And I just think they're the easiest things to love. They're so easy to love unconditionally, and then it's such a healing thing, because my daughter, for example, had the biggest meltdown of her life last night at my niece's birthday party. I won't share too much because it's like her thing, but you feel all the same feelings, right? And when you've started to build awareness, when that's happening, there's a big crowd of people, and you're feeling like she might be judged, you might be being judged as a mother, you're interrupting, all the things you felt as a child, right?
Insert that perfectionism that we were talking about, like right there, another example of like keeping you out of the moment.
All the things you felt as a child, like shame, I'm interrupting, I'm in the way, I'm making a scene, I shouldn't be, like we're doing something wrong, shh, quiet, let's go. All that comes up for me, and it's like, I have to remember in that moment, like the biggest thing I can do is like, I don't want her to feel like she's too much. Or this is too much, or it's not okay to have these feelings. It's like, if I have to, I gotta get her out of there. but I can do it in a way that's loving, not like, come on, let's go, we gotta get out of here, you're embarrassing me, but in a way of like, I'm gonna get you out of here. I know you can't be here. You're not able to be here right now. I'm gonna protect you from any judgment, any whatever. Like, let's go, come on. And screaming, crying, I don't wanna, blah, blah, blah. But like, that's the most loving thing I can do. And sometimes when I love her through that, I can feel myself. We talked before about the image. I think you go further from God when you're trying to reach for perfection to be good enough. You go further away. Because what God is unconditional love. It's like when you learn to embrace and accept all of your humanness and all of who you are and all your parts, like me loving her through that, even though it looks wild, chaotic, or whatever, is me loving those parts of myself that feel like too much sometimes.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then when you can do that, like that's God. That's the way God loves. So when you can practice unconditional love for yourself and for other people, you're closer to God. If you have to be a perfect version of yourself to feel loved, that's further.
And because the channel is Voices of a Priestess, what you're mirroring beautifully is this understanding that no doctrine has taught you that practice.
It's got to be experienced. I think like being exposed to ideologies and teachings is really important, but something that's been really powerful for me is knowing that like it's not an intellectual exercise. It's not even a belief in God. It's a experiencing of it. And it's like what we talked about before with love. If you can recognize that when you feel love, that's God right there. That's your connection right there. You're connected right there. Once you can like start to experience that, then God feels closer and you can see God more all around you. But it's like you have to feel into it and experience it and connect with it energetically and emotionally and like behave it, offer it, serve that way.
And to honor the fact that not everybody is maybe there on the journey to take those steps. Like somebody may be very intellectual about God and stay there.
Yeah.
And somebody, and so this is a very specific thing. Like if this is hitting somebody's newsfeed or if they're clicking on this and staying with us longer than 50 seconds, maybe there is this part of them that is like, yeah, I'm there in the sense that my relationship is a living, breathing relationship. And this concept of breath, like I've been really marinating on this idea that like God's essence is in that breath. So for any time I breathe, it is the divine exuding into existence, just the breath alone. And that's why I think breath practices are so powerful and all the traditions and systems that are there. And it's really hard to abandon love when you are breathing, like intentionally, like I don't find anger in breath. If I'm intentionally breathing, I don't find anger there. I don't find, like, I find this softening component, but it's I have to constantly remind myself to breathe and be intentional with the breath. So, what would you say about the children? How do you?
I can feel you about that. Being judged if they're acting or not fitting into a certain role or type, and I think we do it as mothers too. It's that comparison of like, their child's doing this, and mine should be doing that.
Right.
That's the greatest gift we can give them. I mean, to let her express her emotions in that way, because I think the damage is done. We've been shoved into these molds of like, no, you can't act out. No, don't cry, pick yourself up off the floor, stop screaming. But we're teaching them to really express. And we do more damage by having them, if you would have stayed there and said, no, that's God.
Yeah.
It's just so hard. It's
God only loves you if you keep it together type energy, right?
It's perfection. It does more damage than.
I think it's like a sad irony that like we seek perfection to be loved, but it takes us further from love.
Yeah.
And I hope maybe more people stop doing that and start thinking about, instead of how can I be more perfect, how can I like give myself more grace, and how can I give myself more love? I mean, that'd be amazing.
Well, because I think that the most wounded relationships are the ones with the self. It starts there. Because the only way you can treat someone is how you're having your relationship with yourself. And I think for the voices of the priestess, it's like this deep knowing, and I feel like maybe you guys can resonate with this, or like this deep knowing from a very young age that like until I can figure this thing out, it's never gonna, until I can find a way to find peace within myself, because the peace is always fleeting on the exterior. It was always like short-lived, and then you would then see the other side of it, or the adult that was super loving but then had their moments, right? And then how do you deal with that? Your safety feels violated. So I think so much of this is, how do we teach children? How do we mirror, right? How do we mirror that type of self-relationship?
Self-love and grace, and
And I think like what you said right there with your daughter, that's 100% that. It's like, it's almost like you gotta like throw your little soul in them and be like, what would I do? Like
what would I need?
What would I need? Or like how, because we feel that for sure.
But don't you think sometimes we're still, even at this age, we're still figuring out what we need, It's like looking back at what was missing, what you didn't have, or how you were silenced.
And I think it comes back to this whole, because, we are a spiritual network, right, of women and men, and have found each other. And I was thinking about that, like, when did I first meet both of you? I do know, but it's like you've just always been with me in some ways, like most people are like, oh, at the Christmas party, and I'm like, when in the womb, like where did we first meet each other?
Past life.
Like what's going on here? And I think what I even feel is we do have such a safe space together. We do have such an unconditional love flowing from all of us. There's no judgment. If anything, we joke 90% of the time, right? Because that keeps it light, it keeps it fun. But, for people that are beginning to look for that, like tap into like when you didn't have that. And what did that feel like?
It was like a sense of loneliness. I think one time you asked me, like, are you lonely? And I had all these people. I have a lot of people in my life, like a lot of people around me. But again, it was like not that connection. There were people with history. There's people that know me, but I didn't really even know myself. And so it was a container to sort of, pull up. It's been a journey. It's just been a journey, and we're all on the same journey. And so you can show up just authentically with who you are, and no judgment. And look at the pieces and parts of you, and it's just unconditional love. It is almost like a family with children and women and men.
Right. And do you feel like you had to shift there in your vulnerability and authenticity? Like, did you have to start to discover these aspects of you and then the group came, or was it kind of like the group pulled it out of you? Like, how did you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think we collectively pulled it out of each other. By loving and supporting and sharing stories without judgment or without boundaries. And just it's raw and it's real.
Yeah. And it's like, we talk about this a lot, but you know how they say where two or more are gathered?
Just was gonna say that.
Yeah. I think there's like a spiritual wisdom to that, because you almost need that. We talk about how it mirrors in each other, like when you can recognize love and divinity in other people, whether it's your friends or your children or your partner or whoever. I think community is so important because it just amplifies everything, right? Because you have 3 souls in a room, not one, you know what I mean? Like, it's like, and if all those souls have the same intention, you can feel that in a space. And it's really, really powerful. And I think everyone is scared to be seen, but wants to be seen. They're scared to be seen because they fear that if they are, that they'll be rejected. But then that's what they want more than anything. And I remember when I came to our first women's circle, I was like, I knew you from yoga before, but I didn't know anyone else. And I was coming in and I was like, because sometimes in spiritual communities, there's a real feeling almost that you have to be a certain way. Do you know what I mean? Like, I've got to be accepted. I have to say the right thing, think the right way.
It's like I come for help. I come for help, but let me get my stuff together at the door before I enter.
Yeah, like, am I in my like perfect like? And I just felt like I don't want that. Like, you know, when you're at the stage in your life, almost when you're dating, and you're like, okay, like I like this guy, so I'm gonna try to be what he likes. But then you get to a certain point, and you're like, fuck that. Like, I want something real. That's how I felt when I walked into this group where I was like, I'm gonna tell him I watch Vanderpump Rules. Do you know what I mean? Like, I was like, that's gonna cost. You don't want to know what it is. It's a Bravo speech. But it's like, I was like, I am not the Buddha. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. So it's like, there's just, it feels so good to just be who we are. And we're all at different parts in our journeys. And we're all completely different mixes of life experiences and traits and personalities. But letting everybody be who they are without an agenda other than, I think what we all want for ourselves and each other is a greater connection to our soul, to bring out the leadership, bring our soul to the forefront. I want my soul leading my life. I want to bring that out in other people. And that's what this group of women does, is like, it helps us when we come together. It helps us do that individually. It taps us back in. And then when we come together, we like do that for each other as well. And hopefully for everyone we encounter. You know?
Well, I do think it's not only impacting us as a group, it's impacting, I mean, do you ever leave and then you're noticing the changes in your children or your husband or people just around you? It's powerful.
And you know, this is my biggest rub lately has been this idea of like, and I say this with 100% appreciation for tradition and all that. I really do. Like, I gotta go to the church to get the fix. You know, I gotta go and I just feel this huge rub at times because it's compartmentalizing. It's like putting our souls in these little boxes and being like, I'll check back in on Sunday, you know? And here's the thing, like, I still get so much from the community and from the church setting and from the music and from, you know, like, it totally can pull through and help you connect to that divine essence.
Sure.
And then some days it cannot. And some days it's not where it is. Some days it's, you know, all of a sudden you find yourself in this guided situation where you're getting coffee with your spouse and the sun hits just right. And you're like, God, this is heaven, like right here. And I really want this channel and this group to be heaven recognizers. Like, speaking through, recognizing within themselves, helping each other see it. Like, that has been, I believe, one of the most powerful things for me about this group is that we've, through constant chatter, have put enough grooves in our brain, right? That we have this language and we have this divine eye turned, that we're like waiting for God in any moment, not waiting for hell in any moment. Not that we don't have those days, but
well, and seeing God or the divine or whatever you want to call it, and then everybody else and everybody that you come in contact with every day.
And it just blows open this whole notion as to like, like your life is it. That this is your life. This is what we're meant to do every single moment. And we lose sight of it, and I know I do, but like the more that I can sink into the juice of the day, what this day is bringing me in. This is my question that was coming through before you guys came here. And maybe we'll start with Carla, and then Beth, I want you to pull through what you hear too. But this idea of these systems that are in place that are totally expired.
Yeah.
Okay, these corporate systems, government systems, this is not a political channel, we are not taking sides. There's systems that are very tight squeeze container that a lot of energy and God energy is trying to flow through. My question is, how can someone that is within a system, how do they play it?
Oh my gosh, that's such a good one. Because I'm in the corporate world. I won't say anything specific beyond that. But one thing that's helped me a lot, I can't remember whose book I read or what podcast I was listening to, but there's this, I think the word is tov in Hebrew, but it means everything is spiritual. And so I've been in environments where I went in every day at one point, and it's all beige, and there's a lot of cubicles, and it looks like the opposite of something spiritually awakening or enlivening. It's like the opposite. It's like taking away the energy rather than like, whoo. But I put a Post-it note on my computer that just said everything is spiritual, because I wanted to remember, even in that environment. And I have something, it's something that I've lived by ever since, is trying to remind myself of that every single place you go, and this is another, verse from the Bible, but it's the knock and the door will be opened. I think to me what that means is like, try to find it, like try to see it and you'll see it. Try to connect and you'll feel it. I think we have to be open to it and like put aside some of our doubts or our feelings of unworthiness or this or that. But I've always, for myself and even the people I work with, I've described it as, let's be like a little virus. We're like a little virus, but a good virus in this system. We're like a tiny little virus. We're like COVID-19 and we've escaped from a lab and we're going into these systems, and we're not like, we have the opposite of the intention of doing them harm. We have the intention of infusing them with life and humanity and consciousness, all in the way that we do what we do, that we show up for the people around us, how we hold ourselves, how we act with integrity, how we model what we want to bring into existence, like heaven on earth. How do we try to be that? How do we try to channel that in whatever system we're a part of? Because probably the ones that feel the most bankrupt, spiritually bankrupt, are what need it the most.
Yeah. And that's as you're talking, what I'm hearing is like, if you're listening to this, or if you're finding this, if you're in the trenches, like maybe there was a part of you that was meant to be there, and trust that, because I think if at any point in time, if we split our energy, if we're like 1 foot in the door, 1 foot out the door, God can't come through.
I 100% agree.
Right? Like it's like there's just there's he, she, it, the essence cannot flow when you're not whole.
Yes.
So to fully commit to, maybe if someone's still in a system and they're feeling themselves like.
I completely agree with that. And I want to just say, like, I was in my 20s and I was like, I've got to move to California and study integrative psychology. I was like, that's what I have to do. And I was like, so I wasn't fully investing in the community I was in, or even like open to connections or putting myself out there. We also have to like put ourselves out there. Like coming here knowing nobody, like you have to put yourself out there a little bit. And I know that's really difficult, but I wasn't doing that because I had some imagined future that would have been better than my present day. And as soon as I switched that for myself, I was like, no, I'm going to do it here. And I started doing things locally. I met like the best group of girlfriends. Like I was fully present here, and I was 110% more alive and more powerful and more all of the things. And I was like, then when I thought, because we all have those gnawings, and when you think, oh, I've got to change everything about my life, rather than what if I just fully engaged right now, right here?
Right.
100% tuned in and did the next most loving thing for myself and people around me, whatever.
I think you hear that. I mean, I'm sure you're mirroring, not just in the corporation setting, but like in all aspects of our lives, when we've started to split ourselves away from something, thinking that it can't be this thing. It has to be somewhere else.
Yeah.
That's like the grass is greener on the other side. This person has it, I don't. Like that whole background noise.
Yeah.
And there's something to be said about like fully investing in what's here and trusting that no matter if something's still in your life, anything, any person, anything, as long as it's a safe situation, right? Like as long as you're not putting yourself or others in danger, then maybe there's a purpose there still.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you have a purpose to do something with it and to, contribute in any way that you can in that moment.
My question for you, when you said you sought out people like in that corporate world, like what did that look like? Like,
yeah,
I
was looking to leave, and then I got this offer to do kind of a unique job that I found some sense of purpose in. So I was able to hire certain people, and I think too, honestly, even the people the right people sort of went out and came in, and like right now I have this group of people that. They're like souls. We're connected.
Mm-hmm.
Like 110%. And so I think just being myself in that environment and like that people when you are yourself and in the environment and you are trying to act from love most of the time. I'm not perfect by any means, but when you're trying, people can sense that and people are drawn to that, and then that gives other people permission to be that way. And I feel like there's so many great people everywhere. And sometimes you have a judgment about a place, so everybody inside of it, or even though you're in the same place, you're different than all these people. You know what I mean? And it's not true.
No.
You know what I mean? So I think some of that is that illusion. And I think, like we said, even in spiritual spaces, this is the case, but in professional settings, there's definitely a motivation to put a wall up.
Yeah.
So if you go in differently and you other people kind of are different about it, and then you're going to find people are going to surprise you all the time. But
this idea of like heart walls, I think, is such as we talk about this in a minute, like you can tell that we constantly as humans are putting up these walls. I mean, constantly, right? And even sometimes subconsciously, you don't even know why you have a wall going into a situation, but we know that the only true connections can happen when you put your sword down. Like when you really do put your sword down with the intention of, I'm just going to meet this person where they are today, wherever they are. Like, I'm not going to tell them where they should go. And I know this can get really difficult, right? When you're trying to be, to do good and to, like this whole, and that's again, maybe this trap that happens is like you get more spiritual, then you get more separated. Right? The way that we set it up, because when you're, I mean, I know you guys can both speak to this in some ways, like when you first start out and you're like, okay, I'm gonna go down this road of like waking up and realizing things, and then it's like next thing you know, you're like, oh my gosh, who can I hang out with? Like, or who can, because it almost becomes this built-in separation that we do with our spiritual work at the same time. I don't know. That's not very clarified as it's coming through, but there's something that I'm feeling.
Are you thinking like, I think what I'm thinking of from what you say is like, you almost have to be really precious about it, or like you're when you're kind of newly on your, whatever path you're on, I feel like you're looking for the right way to do it. And you're like, okay, so I think it's these kinds of people, or I think it's this way of living, or these books, or this path, I think this is it. So everybody who's not like this, like I can't be like any of this other, it's this.
Yes.
And then I think you get to a certain point where you're like, oh shit, it was always everything. You know what I mean? It was everyone. It was always all of us. But I do think that's like part of there's I think it's Richard Rohr talks about, it's like, spiritually, we have orientation, disorientation, reorientation. It's like a cycle we go through. And it's like we come up with a worldview, an orientation, that gets dismantled. And then we reorient kind of a new belief system or a new way of being. And then that gets, dismantled. Like it's this cycle. And I think it's like part of it. Just like we have to develop an ego, like to break free of it eventually. Like I think that's really normal. And then all of a sudden you realize like you're being a little bit, you get to a point you're like, oh, I'm being a little bit of a, like, I mean, spiritually snobby.
Yeah. And I still have to keep her in check a lot, I'm like, all right, calm down.
Yeah.
But I think, kind of to wrap some things up and to kind of like finalize and clarify some of the things that have come through, I think what we're speaking to is this deep, intimate, incredibly special, uniquely intertangled relationship that we have to discover within the divine. And holographically, you standing on one side through the lenses of your life, through the struggles, through the situations that are specific to Bethness, and then Carlin over here, specific to Carlinness, and then me over here, we can only give. We're only meant to, and really it's our obligation in this life to funnel it through the lens that we're given and to be pure as we can possibly be and to love as deeply as we can possibly love and take everybody with us in the process. And at no point are you meant to subscribe to my lens or are you meant to subscribe to my lens, and we're just meant to share that with each other so that we can deepen our own connection with the divine, however we see it, express it, tap into it. Yeah. Okay, any final thoughts?
I think I just like, if anyone does feel alone, I just want to acknowledge that and like just say solidarity. I think it's part of every human experience to feel that way at times, and it's not the end of the story. Even if it feels that way, because I have a lot of empathy because I know how that feels. And I think everyone does. So I just want to say to anybody who feels that way, it's not the end of the story, but I know it's super painful. And we love you.
Yes. Yeah. As soon as you said that thing, I was like, we're not meant to walk alone. We're meant to be in this circle and hold hands and carry each other home and take that crying child out of the room and hug them and tell them that we're meant to.
Yeah.
And you're honored and seen for those acts.
Yeah.
Like that, this is, if you don't have someone in your life that can see it and witness it, like we see you, we acknowledge you through time and space, through across the globe, however people are finding these little ways to contribute to this mission of love. Like we honor that, and we know that it's really, it takes each one of us doing those things. It's not going to happen from the top down. It's going to happen from, in the homes and out. So, okay, guys, thank you so much.
Yeah, that was fun.
That was so great. Thank you for joining if you joined us.